Hey guys, this is Varun from Guiding Tech, and today I have the one and only POCO X2 with me. See, the thing about me is that I usually carry a primary device, which is a flagship phone, and then I use a budget or a budget flagship as my secondary device. With the POCO X2, I made an exception. And to be honest, I wasn't let down. Wanna know why? Stay tuned till the end of this video while I give you my long-term review of the POCO X2. Let's get started. Okay, so the first thing that I have to talk about the POCO X2 is the overall design. The build quality of this thing is top notch and the curves here feel quite elegant. So it has a glass build which feels quite premium, but what I like more is that it's not as slippery as one might think. I mean, this is a heavy phone, but the overall feel has been quite rigid and I've had no worries using it without the cover on. Which was actually more of a preference overall as well because I've never fancied those cheap TPU cases, No, anyway, see, I'm not saying that the overall build quality of this phone is as good as a flagship S20, but the build quality and the in-hand feel is quite resemblant to a OnePlus device or any other device that costs in the range of 30 to 40,000, which is saying something for a phone that costs only 16k. That said, one quirk that I've had with the overall design is this circular ring around the camera module. It's useless, to be very honest. I mean, it serves no purpose and it does not even look that good, at least to me. And the thing is, even case makers try to omit that and cover that up. Even POCO's official case covers that up, so you can get an idea. Obviously, that point in itself is also pointless. It makes no difference to the end user, but yeah, that thing annoys me when this phone is resting on my desk. I take a look at it and I see that circular ring along with all the fingerprint smudges because this thing is a fingerprint magnet as well. But when you turn things over, things get really good, really good. Okay, so let me establish a simple point here. I personally would any day pick a 60Hz AMOLED panel over any LCD higher refresh rate panel. That's a personal preference because I can get accustomed to a refresh rate, but the panel quality makes a lot of difference to me personally. So yeah, that is the entire concept that I want to establish before talking about the POCO X2. Now that I've established that, the display on this thing is freaking great. This is probably the best LCD panel out there on any smartphone. At least for Android basically, because the iPhone XR, well, it still has a better LCD panel. But let's reserve that conversation for another day. Right now, this LCD panel is hands down the best on the market. The 120Hz refresh rate on this feels super fluid, and while I've always felt MIUI's animations were quite heavy, I mean, they still are, it also feels so seamless and exquisite on this one. So to be honest, a normal user would not really notice a lot of difference coming from a 90Hz panel to a 120Hz panel, but when you're someone who uses a 144Hz panel on his laptop every day, switching from 144Hz to 120Hz is a lot easier on your eyes. And it's not like the panel is bad for content consumption, The color reproduction is still great, and with HDR support, binge watching Netflix shows on this is not at all an issue. It's just when you move on to darker visuals, say something like Gotham or The Walking Dead, the panel shows that it just can't compete with AMOLEDs. Basically, it's not a bad panel overall, but if your sole purpose from your device is content consumption, you should look for something from the house of Samsung. Okay, so one of the major talking points for any smartphone camera in today's age is the camera, and the POCO X2 comes with the flagship Sony IMX686. Now, I won't delve into the proper details of it because I've already done a camera comparison of the POCO X2 with multiple devices, links for which will be in the description box below, and the camera is pretty damn good. In a nutshell, while the POCO X2 is not a clear-cut winner, it definitely offers the best camera performance for its price. The colors are slightly saturated, and while the dynamic range could be better, the shots are quite detailed. That said, the biggest advantage here is that this phone comes sort of from the house of Xiaomi. And if the POCO F1 and even the Redmi Note 8 Pro for that matter have taught us anything, is that over the months, Xiaomi actually updates their software, tweaking the camera performance a lot. If you look at the Note 8 Pro's camera today, obviously there's a drastic difference from what it was when it was launched, and the overall performance has become great. The same for the POCO F1, and Surely, the Sony IMX sensor is a new sensor right now, but with the upcoming updates, this could pretty much become the best camera phone out there, even for under 30,000. And that is something that I'm not even making up. This could actually become a lot better with time. And all of this that I've spoken of in terms of camera is talking about the stock camera itself. This comes with the 730G, which means you also get access to Gcam. And while there is already a handful of Gcam ports available, we can only expect development to further improve because POCO is already sending out their units to developers across the globe, and with more development happening on the device, Gcam performance is also going to take a massive boost. And I mean, this can easily compete with Pixel devices one day. We saw the POCO F1 compete with Pixel, and this can easily do that as well. Okay, so while we are on the topic of custom development, let me delve into the software bit as well. So the phone comes with MIUI 11 and I'm not really a fan of it. That's a very personal preference, but the whole idea is that I don't like to sway a lot away from stock Android, which the MIUI 11 does. That's a very personal call and you may totally like the MIUI 11 and that is completely fine. The Me Share feature is something that I absolutely love and the Quick Replies feature is another great addition. That said, what truly annoys me here are the ads. So POCO claims that there are no ads on this device, but Me Browser, Me Video, and basically Me disagrees. Like there are ads on this thing. And I know a lot of you guys don't really mind the ads that much as I'm making it sound right now, and that's completely fine. That's your personal preference. But for me, I would not want to use my phone in front of my parents when an ad like this shows up. Nonetheless, like I mentioned, POCO has given a lot of their X2 units to a lot of developers out there, so you can start to see a lot of custom ROM development happening. There are a couple of ROMs already available, but they're not as stable as you would want them to. Though in the coming weeks or even months, things could change for a lot better. And I'm actually looking forward to installing one of my favorite custom ROMs, that is USB extended, on this phone. Which also reminds me, I would love to hear if you are into custom ROM development or basically flashing ROMs, and what's your favorite custom ROM. Make sure to sound off below. Now, regardless of whether you like or dislike the UI, one thing that everyone has to agree upon is the performance factor, and the Snapdragon 730G on the POCO X2 makes this phone a powerhouse. This phone flies through daily tasks like nothing. For me, that is basically multitasking between a lot of apps, listening to songs on Spotify, streaming a show of Brooklyn Nine-Nine every now and then, and playing a game or two of PUBG on the side. Now that last part that I spoke of is sort of a bummer to a lot of you guys, and it should be, because the Snapdragon 730G cannot play PUBG on the highest settings possible, which is something that the G90T can do, at least in smooth settings. And I mean, that is fine, but one thing that a lot of you guys are missing out is that with the 120Hz refresh rate, you also get a higher touch sampling response rate, which basically eliminates the input lag and makes the overall experience smoother. Obviously, it's not the same as having smooth plus extreme settings, but I mean, it's still almost there. And here's the thing. So I started this video off talking about how I use a flagship phone as my primary and how I switched to the POCO X2, which is a budget mid-range device. And see, the thing is, if you leave the benchmarks aside, the overall performance offered by this phone is almost as good as a Snapdragon 800 series chipset. In fact, in the 45 days of usage that I've had this phone with me, I've never noticed a hiccup or the phone breaking a sweat or stuttering or lagging anywhere, which is pretty good actually. Okay, so before we wrap things up, let's talk about the battery life on this thing. And this is one area where budget or mid-range devices always outsmart flagship devices. The Snapdragon 730G is a very power efficient chipset and it beats out any flagship device that I've used or probably will use in the coming days, because the battery life offered by this phone is amazing. The 4000 mAh battery on this phone, despite having the 120Hz refresh rate turned on all the time, easily makes the phone last an entire day, and I still have enough juice left at the end of the day to watch a show or two at night, which is something that makes a lot of difference. Another thing that makes a lot of difference is that the POCO X2 not only supports but also comes with a 27-watt charger inside the box. Surprisingly, that 27-watt charger is faster than the 30-watt charger on the Realme X2, and that makes a lot of difference, not just in numbers but in real life usage as well. So, is the POCO X2 worth your money? Well, let me try and answer that question by painting a picture for you. So, in the time that the POCO X2 was launched, since then we've seen two new major launches in the form of Realme 6 series and the Redmi Note 9 Pro series. Now, I've used both the series phones quite rigorously, and while I'm still working on my full-fledged review, I can wholeheartedly say that the POCO X2 is easily the best phone to buy under 20,000. And I'm not saying that it's a perfect phone. I mean, if you're into gaming, the Helio G90T is a much better processor. In terms of cameras, looking at the current scenario, the Realme 6 Pro actually manages to outperform this, which is something that I noted in my camera comparison of the video as well. If you're into content consumption, obviously Samsung devices are better. If you are looking for in-hand feel, obviously there are other devices that feel more ergonomic than the POCO X2. But when you compare everything, when you look at the entire package as a whole and then put a price tag right next to it, the POCO X2 is the best phone to buy with the highest value for money points. And that is something that I can completely agree on. This phone easily is the best overall phone under 20,000 and is completely worth your money. Well, that was my full-fledged review of the POCO X2 after 45 days of full-fledged usage. Now, if you plan on buying the POCO X2 or have already bought one, I also have a full-fledged tips and tricks videos for the POCO X2 which you should definitely check out as a consumer. Also, if you have any more queries about the POCO X2 that you feel I did not answer in my review, feel free to comment below and I'll tell you all about it. This is Varun from Guiding Tech and I'll see you in the next one.